Hello and welcome to Surveyor Says, the podcast from the National Society of Professional Surveyors. Today's installment of Future Focus is with Jim Coan, NSPS Director for Washington and LSAW Past President. My name is Tim Burch, Vice President of NSPS, and I sat down with Jim during the recent LSAW conference outside of Seattle to discuss the evolution of surveying. Jim is currently working on a manual of surveying basics that will help those who are new to the profession better understand the fundamentals of what we do. His experience as a practitioner as well as an adjunct professor couple well with the easygoing demeanor that is apparent in our chat. Thanks for joining us, and hear why Jim sees surveying entering into an exciting era on this edition of Future Focus here on Surveyor Says. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Future Focus here on the Surveyor Says podcast. My name is Tim Burch, and I'm here today with a distinguished gentleman in the Washington area, Mr. Jim Coan. He is the current NSPS Director for Washington. And welcome, Jim. And
Thank you.
What we're trying to talk about today is really where the profession is going, especially here in the Pacific Northwest, and a few of the things that Jim has put together over the years of pushing the technician forward and where we see the stuff going. So I guess first, Jim, why don't you give us a little background on who you are and where you've been?
Okay, well, my name is Jim Coan. I started surveying in Maryland, as a matter of fact, on the East Coast. I grew up in the Maryland area, and when I came back from Vietnam, I needed a job. I was working in a 7-Eleven, and I didn't see that as a career field. And I was hired on as a rear chainman by Eldon Snyder of Snyder and Associates. And I worked for him, and then I worked down in Annapolis, Maryland for Russ Lohman. And then I moved out west, and I worked up in Canada, in Alberta, and then I came to Washington State, and I worked on the eastern side of the state, then here on the western side. I'm a professional land surveyor in Washington and Oregon, and I'm also a certified federal surveyor. And I taught at Renton Technical College for 23 years, and I was an adjunct professor at Seattle University for 5 years.
Very nice.
That just about sums it up.
That's excellent. Well, and part of the reason we're talking today is because of your background and the experience that you've had and seeing the changes in the profession. That was one reason, and I'll be completely honest, that I invited you on because I really wanted to hear how you were doing things differently up here, in my opinion, with promoting the profession and pushing the technician side of things. Your work at Renton Technical College, I've heard through various sources, was an excellent curriculum, and just curious where you're going, where you think the profession itself is going, and where it needs to go.
Well, this is an exciting time for surveyors. I used to tell my students, and I still do when I give seminars and talks. When I started surveying, it was closer to the way George Washington surveyed than the way we are now.
Exactly.
And with all the technology that's at the disposal of these surveyors, these technicians, it is really an exciting time. But with that, we have to be careful, because we have technicians out there that are very good surveyors, want to be good surveyors, and they can go out there and they can use a robotic instrument and they can do GPS and scanning and all these things, but they don't know the theory behind it, because there's a lot of technicians out there that have had little or no formal education. And we have to be able to reach out and help those people, because every time they go in the field, they're carrying my stamp and every other professional surveyor stamp. And if they know a lot, that's good. If they know more, that's better. And if they know too much, that's just right.
Exactly. Well, and as we've talked about over the years, the profession has changed, not with not just the technology itself. It's what it's allowed the freedom of of a field crew to reduce from 2-man or from 3-man to 2-man, and now a lot of cases 1-man, and we've lost that mentoring opportunity. how do you see us? How do we get that back? Where do we need to
Well,
go?
first of all, when I learned a lot of the stuff that I did, it was on the job. I can remember learning how to calculate horizontal curves over the hood of a truck. And now, with the automation that we have, with the CAD work we have, the computers we have, the data collection, all the stuff that we have, the technician has lost that mentoring. And it's not because we're, as professionals, we're too lazy or we just don't want to be bothered with them, but because the way that we survey now, we just don't have that opportunity to.
Right.
So one of the things that I'm doing, and I'm getting help from surveyors all over the place, I'm putting together a book on math for surveyors. Now, this book is intended for the surveyor or the surveying technician who has little or no formal education. And what I'm doing is I'm going through the basics of algebra and the basics of trigonometry and showing the surveyor, the survey tech, how this applies to what we're doing. So I'm taking the math and I'm putting it into surveyese.
Right.
And I'm trying to create this book where a surveying technician can sit by himself and he can learn this stuff. I'm putting a PowerPoint together with it, and hopefully it'll be a help to the surveying technician out there, and whether they're in the state of Washington or in the state of Florida, it doesn't
Sure.
matter.
Sure. Yeah, that's just it. I mean, that math, that instruction is universal.
Oh, yeah.
So that's awesome. Just kind of as a side note, so who's sponsoring this? Who's paying for all of this?
I am.
Exactly, and I guess that's part of the reason that it was important to me to help you promote this manual you're putting together, because to me this is a work of love, and because of the love of the profession, and you love what you do.
Well, I'm very fortunate because I have the luxury of time because I'm retired now. And so I can sit with my cup of coffee in front of the computer and I can go through this kind of stuff. And I'm also very fortunate that I have sent rough drafts of this book out to surveyors all across the nation. And getting their feedback is a big help. And most surveyors, the professionals that I've talked to, see that this is really important and it has its place in the world. And so, it's a work in progress right now, but I'm getting close to being finished with it. And anybody who wants it, we're going to work out some kind of a detail that they can get it.
Sure. Well, I guess just in the short time I've had my hands on it and looked through it, as much as I do appreciate it going for the technician, I think it's a good, if nothing else, a refresher for those who are moving on to their survey intern, taking the FS and the PS through NCSS. I mean, it's a good comprehensive exercise to run through. That it's quite impressive. It really is. So I guess what pushed you into wanting to put this thing together?
Well, I think it's really because of the way that I came up through the profession. I was hired off the street, and they gave me a plumb bob, and I had no idea what that was about. And it just came through the profession. I've been very fortunate. I've had wonderful mentors in my life, and they've helped me about. And I'm very fortunate to be where I am. And I see that the technician doesn't have those advantages that I had.
Right.
And they need them. And I talk about this book, but I as you know, I teach at a lot of seminars, at state seminars and stuff. And when the old ACSM days and the conferences that we used to have there, I was always there. And all of my classes, whether it's math for surveyors or if it's random error theory or PLSS or whatever it may be, I try to gear it towards the technician because the professional has a lot of resources that they can go to.
Right.
And a lot of very good resources. I'm not I don't see that with the technician, and they need this stuff too. They need to become a part of our profession and think of themselves as being in a profession, not just having a job.
Exactly. I guess kind of to look back through history a little bit, and I mean, you talk about the old ACSM days, and how have you seen that the profession and the professionals have changed? How have we evolved from the 70s and 80s till today, in as far as the interactions with professionals?
Well, you know, that's really interesting. And the best way I can say it, when I started surveying, we were a plain surveyor. The earth was flat with square corners, you know. Now we're geodetic surveyors.
Right.
And we take into consideration the ellipsoid of the earth, the geoid of the earth. Those are common terms to us now. And, you know, with GPS, we're not talking about creating our own little grid system at 10,000, 5,000. We're talking about earth-centered, earth-fixed coordinates.
Right.
And just over coffee like it's another thing. So we've evolved, and we have much more tools available to us, and we have to be on top of these things. And I think that other professionals that we deal with, attorneys, engineers, stuff like that, are realizing our importance now. And that even goes into, you know, our day on the Hill when we go up into Congress. Mm-hmm. We're starting to make inroads there too, and that's
exactly.
So I think we're helping our profession, and I know especially people is my age, older. Some people are naysayers and say that, you know, things are just terrible, but it's an exciting time to be a surveyor, and I'm jealous of these young kids. They have so many neat things, and I want to help them as much as I can.
Exactly. Well, God, that's fantastic. I guess you're talking about earth-centered, earth-fixed coordinates and things. Based upon your experience, we're getting ready to run into new terrestrial frames with NGS in 2022.
Oh yeah.
How important do you see it that the technician is in the middle of all of that and understanding where we need to be with all this transformation?
I think it's critical, absolutely critical, that they have an understanding of this. Think about this. What we have now, or what we're going to have with the new 2020 datum, 2022 datum, we're carrying our benchmarks with us now. We don't have to run 5 miles of benchmarks just to get an elevation on our job. I mean, we're carrying them with us, and we're to within 2 centimeters.
Right.
That's less than an inch, and that's like talking about angels dancing on the head of a pin. I mean, the things that these guys are going to do, and these young men and women are going to do, are just incredible. You know, we wouldn't even thought of it when we were technicians. When we were technicians, we were the young pups.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it's going to be critical, and that's one thing that I think NSPS is going to help take the lead on this transformation. A lot of it's going to come back to the surveyor and the surveying community when we're trying to help explain to contractors and building trades and agriculture and going, why does my coordinates change? Why are things shifting?
That's right.
And I think a lot of people are going to look to the surveyor and go, how do I make this work? And we're going to have all those technicians out on the front lines with a dozer operator that's going to walk up and go, why am I not in the right place now?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So I completely agree with you that yes, it's important that the technicians are on the front end of all of this, and really, I think your curriculum that you've put together here, your manual, helps establish what that's all about and where the basis of all that stuff is.
Yeah, they need to know the theory behind what they're doing, you know, and there's another thing that just drives me crazy that I hear from time to time with professional surveyors is all we're doing is raising the generation of button pushers. Well, I'm here to tell you, if we're raising nothing but button pushers, it's our fault, not theirs.
Right.
We are the mentors, and we may not be legally bound to mentor our technicians, but we're certainly morally bound to. And that's what's important. We always have to keep that in mind.
Exactly. You know what? And I'm glad you brought that up, because I was was just at another conference, and little shout out to a friend of mine, Todd Horton, who runs the surveying program at Parkland College in Champaign, Illinois. I was listening to an ethics class of his, because obviously that's part of our continuing education, is taking ethics classes.
Oh, yeah.
And he stressed that it is the licensed surveyor as the mentor, as the leader, being able to provide that information for those technicians, to provide that information and that guidance. That you're right, if those technicians become button pushers and button pushers alone, it's our fault.
Oh, yeah.
We are fully responsible for it. So, yeah, you know what, hearing you say that, I think that's resonating across the profession.
I agree. As a matter of fact, I was just hired by a local company here in the Seattle area a couple months ago. I gave about a 3-4 hour class on random error theory to their party chiefs, to their technicians, and we've had several conversations about how important I think random error theory is for the technician to understand that there are random errors out there and how we can minimize them and how we can identify them and all those kinds of things, because he's the guy in the field and he's got our stamp on his shoulders every time he goes out there, and he needs to know this stuff.
Oh, exactly. I guess I tire of the stories that I hear that somebody will go out, check one of the old NGS monuments that are local, whatever, and say, "Oh, well, I missed it by 6 or 700, so it must be bad." And it's like, bad? Wait a second. You're marrying old technology with old data with new technology, and you're saying it's bad? No, that's fantastic, actually. Yeah. So yes, I think you're right. Hearing that you're providing that kind of a class is, I hate to say it's unique, but it's a good unique. I think we need to be able to have more of that. So, personally, I'm going to be here. We're actually at the Wisconsin Land Surveyors Conference here in just outside of Seattle. I'm going to go personally.
Washington, not Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Thank you. Cut that one out. I was just in Wisconsin. Washington. Very good. I'm going to sit in on that. And when I found out that class was going on, I'm going to sit in on that because it's a realistic factor of what we do every day.
Oh yeah.
And you're bringing it to light.
Yeah, and they need to know it. It's just all part of what we do. It's part of our profession. And we'll go out there and we'll tell the guy, "I want you to double the angle." He has no idea why. And he says, "Why do you double the angle?" "Because the boss told me to." And
right.
They don't realize what it does for them, things like that. And I like to tell the story. I had a party chief when I was in practice. Very good party chief, a smart young man, dedicated, wanted to do a good job. The kind of guy you like on your jobs, and had a degree in math, and he was running a level loop. And he came off a benchmark that was established, I think, in the 80s or 70s or something like that. And he had an electronic level. And he put down all his numbers, his rod readings, everything to 3 decimal places. And he was so proud of himself that he closed well and all that kind of stuff. But he didn't realize that these temporary benchmarks himself were not good to 3 decimal places, Exactly. But he didn't understand why. And that was the mathematician in him, because the mathematicians, right. they like exact things. And so we had a little talk, and he understood my concerns. And so that was a moment to educate, that mentoring thing that we were talking about.
Right, exactly.
And he's still a very good party chief. So he just got his LSIT, as a matter of fact.
Nice. Well, good. Good. Yeah, because that's been the interesting to watch the progression of technology with data collectors especially. And depending on the user settings, yes, you can run it out to 3, 4, 5 decimal places. Yep. And to your point, with random errors, it's not that good. And it has to be understood where those errors can lie, especially when you're not doubling angles, when just all the factors that play into that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So, well, and I tell you what, one story I do want us to tell, and it's about Jim.
Oh no!
and I guess this is what, I mean, I've known Jim for several years through NSPS. One thing that impressed me was a couple of years ago, NSPS, the American Surveyors, were challenged by the Chinese for a surveying competition. And the funny thing was, we had a couple months to prepare for it, but the American team didn't know each other until they met, when we met on the site. The Chinese had been preparing for literally years, like a year and a half for this thing. What I liked about it when we came together, and Jim was one of the participants, that it was fun to watch your team working in the field.
Oh, it was good. Yeah.
And because the way the competition was you had to use total station, terrestrial type of data collection, use GPS, and use a digital level. And watching your team put all of that together, and the Americans did prevail in the field, by the way. It was fun to watch, and your enthusiasm out there with that team was contagious.
Well, speaking selfishly for that, what was really neat about that, although I really enjoyed it, but one of the surveyors, a professional land surveyor, one of the surveyors on my team was a former student of mine.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and it was so nice to be able to work with him, and he's a branch chief with the BLM now.
Oh, wow.
And so that's one of the great things about being a former teacher. You see how well your students are doing. It really, it's good for your ego, if nothing else.
Well, and I think you hit on that with part of the profession, whether it's teaching, whether it's in a business setting with former underlings. It is family.
Oh yeah,
it's very much family, and I think that's the one common thread that I appreciate about surveying is that it is that family aspect, and you want to see them succeed. You want to see them do their best.
Yeah, and very few surveyors don't want that. I
Right.
mean, there's probably the odd guy out there that says, I'm not going to be bothered teaching these people anything, but that's rare. And,
Right.
and they're either lousy surveyors or they don't last long.
Exactly. Well, putting the manual together, I think I think it takes it to a whole nother level myself. That you're wanting to help promote and push the profession where it should be. That as we were talking earlier about, it's not just the surveyor anymore; it's surveying and the entire team that's together. I'll give credit to John Fenn from Michigan. He's the first one I heard say it about when you send that crew out. You're sending out your license, your liability, the truck, the equipment. You're sending so much responsibility on that team to go out there, or sometimes that individual, that we need to make sure that they have the best, not just the equipment, but the best skills and tools.
Oh yeah,
for all of that.
Because it's to your advantage. I mean,
Yes.
you think about it. You're the one that signs the stamp and signs it, and it's to your advantage that they can do the best they can, and they know the best you can.
Absolutely.
And if it's going to cost you a couple more dollars and payroll, fine. That's money well spent.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So where do you see the profession in 5-10 years? Where do you hope it goes?
I tell you, it's one of the things that I'm very appreciative of NSPS and our state societies is that we're starting to recognize. You said this is a profession of surveying instead of surveyors.
Mm-hmm.
And they're starting to realize the value of the technician. We have the Certified Surveyor Technician Program. We have all these things going on, the Trig Star, the murals we have that are in my grandson's school right now,
Mm-hmm.
things like, and we're really reaching out, and like this podcast. I mean, we're making ourselves more available, and we're getting the word out about surveyors, and we're realizing that this professional and this technician, we're a team, and we're accomplishing the same goal, and we want to make it best for everybody.
Exactly.
And 10 years from now, I'm going to be sitting in the corner telling everybody how great I was. And we're going to have these young people running things, and it's going to be wonderful.
Well,
I'm really encouraged by the young people that are coming into our profession, the young people that we see coming into the NSPS.
Yes.
You know, and the young surveyors, and so it's an exciting time.
I think it is too. I think it is too. Well, I would also like to thank Chrissy Wilson and LSAW for giving us the space and the time to be able to sit down and have this conversation. This is one I've been wanting to have for a while, selfishly, because of getting to know Jim and his passion and knowing the things that, even at this stage in his career, well, he's still making the profession better, period. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We do definitely appreciate that. A lot of good things going on up here in the Pacific Northwest. Like I said, the young surveyors are starting to gain some traction, and a lot of great stuff at LSAW. We're very impressed with the organization. So,
I'm proud of it too. I'm past president of the organization, and it's you talk about the young people taking over. You should see these people. They're going to be great.
Exactly. Well, Jim, I'd like to thank you for your time. We try to keep these in 30 minutes or so, just so people can get off the small bites. But to me, this was an important bite to get and give out to the people.
Well, it was a real honor talking with you. The fact that you wanted to talk with me, it's a real honor, and I want to commend you and Kurt and anybody else who is involved with this podcast. This is a great thing for the surveyors, and it's really enjoyable for all of us.
Well, you've been a big proponent of it and a big cheerleader for a while on this as well. So it only makes sense. But like I said, I think it makes more sense to. And hopefully the listeners are the same way. I've got just my hair standing up on end from your passion. I just do appreciate that.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Well, that'll be it for here, just outside of Seattle, Washington, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. You've been listening to our Future Focus with Jim Coan here on the Surveyor Says podcast. We look forward to helping Jim see his goal of publishing his Survey Technician Manual in the very near future. Upcoming episodes will delve into surveyors and specific insurance requirements, upcoming legislation that will affect our profession, and how NSPS adapted for its members during the COVID-19 pandemic. So remember, subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, as well as our podcast host, Podbean. And also watch our website, nsps.us.com, for information on future episodes. And remember, it's a great day to be a surveyor.